Which player surprised us most during the first day of the NFL Combine? And are there some potential Cowboys targets out there from the Thursday testing? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your
Locked
daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on
Cowboys.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, the first day of on-the-field drills have wrapped up in Indianapolis. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. You know, it was great watching all the drills and kind of getting back into the combine. I love the combine. I love watching it. Even if there's not always a ton to get out of it from every single group, it's just fun to watch these guys move around and together and just kind of as a unit. And between, combine events, I'm battling off Bills fans who apparently didn't listen to the podcast yesterday and were continually hitting us up about the fact that we mentioned Stephon Diggs' name. So in honor of all those Bills fans who were mad at a thumbnail but didn't listen to the podcast to have us figure out exactly what we were talking about, I'm wearing my Super Bowl 28 t-shirt in which the Dallas Cowboys, just a quick reminder, the Dallas Cowboys defeated the Buffalo Bills 30-13. This was the year after they defeated the Bills in the Super Bowl 52-17. So just a quick reminder.
I am friends with a lot of Bills fans. I went to a Bills game last year, and Bills fans, they love jumping off trucks and on tables just as much as they love jumping to conclusions. So it's not surprising at all. So let's talk about the combine a little bit later, and let's get to some questions because today is Friday. It's question day. First question from Cowboy Due Diligence. He wants to know, are there any players so far from the combine who have made you more interested in for the Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting question because it's kind of a little bit about what you anticipated and what you thought about the players beforehand and how much needle moving is done by the on-field athletics. Yeah. So far, we've done, defensive line, edge and linebackers, and those are all very, athletically heavy positions to be sure. But I would also say that, 40 times for defensive tackles, you get some information out of the 10. You get some information out of the 10 for the edge guys as well. I think the 40 times certainly matter. And linebacker, I think it matters as well. So I think it's a lot of just kind of checking boxes here, right? Like making sure that thresholds are met and making sure that like there isn't anything just completely out of whack with what you see either on film or with an expectation based on, the kind of athleticism of that player. Mm-hmm. So I think really the only thing that kind of the things that moved the needle is like for me when I see a player kind of in a different means than I guess I normally would. And I think for the guy that really kind of opened my eyes, and I'm sure you're going to talk about the other one here in a second, but was Benton from Wisconsin, the defensive tackle. Yep. I think part of the reason I've struggled with him at times is that he keeps, and you watch the tape and he's playing nose tackle and you keep kind of getting sold with him as a nose tackle, but you watch and you go look at him and he weighs in, I think at 309 pounds, if I'm not mistaken.
309. Yep. 34-inch arms.
And that to me, 34-inch arms, like that to me reads like a guy who, and again, I understand the game. I understand that people lose weight to run faster. I understand all that. But I think if you're talking about a guy who's closer to that 309 to let's say 315 range, I think that's more of a guy that you can play as a 3 technique with his explosiveness. And I think that fits his skill set better, especially what we saw at the Senior Bowl versus what he's being projected to as a nose tackle. Lots of people talking about it. I think the parts of being a nose tackle, the main parts of what you do as a nose tackle, taking on double teams, just stuffing run plays in the middle of the defense. I think that's actually where Benton kind of struggles a little bit. I think it's the get off and the penetration stuff that he's actually better at. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the combine kind of showed me that he can be that kind of athlete. It's not just a case where there's a mismatched skill set with a very athletic body.
He tested like at the 85th percentile among defensive tackles, which is very good. But I will be honest, I wonder if Neville Gallimore has just scared me away from all these up the field penetrating defensive tackles that run fast 40 times because, man, that's great if you can get up the field, but it's still, can you take on double teams? Can you be a factor in the run game? And if you're not, what are you?
Yeah, I think the difference here for me is that it's how you're viewing it, right? It's the eyes of the beholder, right? Like if I'm viewing Benton as a guy whose job it is almost exclusively to take on double teams, I don't like the way he takes on double teams.
I agree.
But if we're talking about someone who will occasionally have to take on double teams, much like Gallimore or some of these other more penetrating defensive tackles, I like his chances, his odds there, doing it occasionally as opposed to making it his full-time job. If that makes sense.
Can I ask you about another defensive tackle?
Yeah.
Kalijah Cansey. Now, we only saw him do a little bit yesterday, but to me, kind of one of the big winners from Thursday for the fact that not only was he over 6 foot, but
That's
actually
exactly
6'1", 281, and then ran a 4.67 40-yard dash with a 10-yard split of 1.64, which I just went to double check this. That's the fourth fastest ever for an interior defensive lineman.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. The height to me was the big thing here, right? I think you can convince yourself that you could play a guy at defensive tackle at 284 or whatever it was that he weighed in. I think he could probably put on, 5 pounds without
if he gets to
too much
290,
explosion.
whatever, right?
Exactly. But that 6'1", that height element is a big deal, especially if you ever want to plan on using him, inside outside. I think this is kind of more of the inverse, of what the Cowboys normally have, right? The defensive end that can reduce down to tackle. This is a defensive tackle who can move out to defensive end. I think it takes some snaps there. I think him coming in not only at 6'1", but like a full 6'1", like taller even than Aaron Donald, which I think to me was a lot of what people were pointing to before this was, will he even be as tall as Aaron Donald? And not, again, there's a lot of comparison going on with Aaron Donald. I think that's completely unfair to this player, but I do think that he is on that spectrum. So I think that that's why there's a lot of physical comparisons, because he may not be that caliber of player, but I think he is that same type of player.
Right. And we've seen a lot of these guys that are similar size have success now. Like when you start talking about sub 6 foot defensive tackles, sub 290 pounds, that's where it gets a little wonky. But like,
yeah,
Ed Oliver is 6'1", 287 and didn't run this fast of a 40. And he's had a nice NFL career. To tie this back to Buffalo. Here you go, Buffalo fans. If you listen past,
thanks for watching
a few minutes. Yeah. So I am interested. Now, I don't know. I don't know what Dallas, their interest would be here. But at the same time, Dan Quinn had Grady Jarrett, who
I was going to say
was
it's not unreal, right?
It's not unreal. And if the goal is to get somebody who can legitimately get to the quarterback at the defensive tackle position, this might be your guy.
I would also say, again, like, I think the arm length thing it could be a barrier entry at some point, but
I would agree.
I do think that the fact that he can, play both inside and outside, I think that, again, that boosts his chance for the Cowboys, because I think they love that sort of up and down the line versatility as we've seen, the last 2 years.
All right, let's continue to talk about some more guys that stood out to us during Thursday's NFL Combine next. This episode is brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and the calories, then you've got to try Built Bar. Summer's coming up. We're all trying to get in a little bit better shape. Let Built Bar help you get there. They only have 130, sometimes 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, but only 4 grams of sugar. Absolutely phenomenal for your diet. Plus, they come in so many great flavors, including churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. Not sure how Built does it, but they've made the absolute best protein bar on the market. And now you don't even have to wait to get a box. You can, of course, always go to Built.com, order there. But if you live next to a Walmart, you can go to the pharmacy section, pick up a 4-bar box of the cookies and cream, the double chocolate, or the coconut puffs. Or if you live close to a Sam's Club, like I do, you can run in real quick and get the 13-bar box of some of the hit flavors, including brownie batter and churro. You can thank us later. Check out Built.com for all of their latest flavors and the entire inventory over there. Built Bar, going to help you get in shape for summer. looking forward to seeing you guys try your very first Built Bar. All right, Lane, let's talk about some more winners from Thursday's Combine. Who impressed you?
Well, I don't know if we haven't had a chance to kind of discuss any of these linebackers yet. So maybe we should discuss the Iowa kid, Jack
Campbell.
Cunningham?
Jack
Campbell. I always want to say
Yeah.
Cunningham. He had an incredible combine. Do you have the numbers right in front of you?
I do.
Yeah,
they're
let's hear 'em.
absolutely ridiculous. So he came in at 6'5", 250 pounds, 4.65 40-yard dash with a 1.59 10-yard split, which is absolutely elite. 37.5-inch vertical, 10.8 broad jump. Here's the best one: 6.74 3-cone. That's 99th percentile among linebackers. 4.24 20-yard shuttle. That's in the 90th percentile among all linebackers.
6.74 3-cone at 6'5". What'd you say? 265?
250.
That's good. He could almost be a pass rusher with those numbers, right?
Yep.
I think. Let me ask you this: reading those numbers, who does that remind you of?
Leighton Vander Esch.
Leighton Vander Esch,
Yep.
completely. I mean, it's just like the length, the height, the weight, the speed combined with all those things. It's a pretty easy comparison. I definitely have. He's a guy that after his combine. I've watched a little bit of him through osmosis of watching a couple other Iowa players, so I've noticed him. But I'm definitely planning on going back and do a nice heavy rewatch because if he lasts until like something like the 3rd or 4th round, which I don't know if he will.
No, there's no way. There's no way.
I think that could be interesting for the Cowboys. I don't know if the Cowboys would pull the trigger in the first 2 rounds on a guy like this, but he certainly is an interesting talent to say the least.
And it might depend, right? Like, let's say Leighton Vander Esch gets more money than expected, and the Cowboys have to piece together the linebacker core, and all of a sudden, here's this 6'5" linebacker that can take on blocks available at pick 57 or 58 or wherever the Cowboys draft in the 2nd round. And it's like, okay, I see it. Like, he's a phenomenal athlete who I think he won the nation's top linebacker award this year. He was PFF's highest graded linebacker. Like, not a lot of downside here. I think he's just going to be a good NFL player.
Yeah, I look, Iowa linebackers. I mean, Iowa football players in general, they are built in a very positive manner. They're used to being hard coached. They're used to, committing and being dedicated. You'd love to see linebackers come out of this kind of organization because you just know that they're going to be gritty. And with that level of athleticism as well, I think that's the big Leighton Vander Esch thing for me, right? Is that Vander Esch was this incredible athlete who tested incredibly well, but he also was very old school in a lot of ways as a linebacker. So hopefully you might get something like that with Jack Campbell as well.
Yeah, and I think about like Josie Jewell, who we talked about. Was that the 2018 draft? I think. Josie Jewell had great tape, but was slow. I think he ran like a 4.8. 4.65 at 250 is not slow. Like,
that's not slow.
No, and when you combine that with the explosiveness, like we're talking about a completely different level of prospects. So Jack Campbell, one of the big winners from Thursday. Defensive ends, we should also just kind of briefly touch on those guys. I don't know how highly the Cowboys will draft a defensive end. They certainly will draft at least one, but my goodness, what an athletic class. It's unbelievable.
I mean, all of our, I remember a week ago somebody yelling at John Owning for always drafting Nolan Smith at 26.
Yeah.
And I think after last night, we all saw exactly why John kept on drafting Nolan Smith at 26. That guy is a freak of nature. And I think my favorite part of yesterday, honest to God, was watching the Georgia locker room watch him run the 40. Did you see that video?
I did.
That was
great.
That was amazing. That was so much fun to see how hyped they were for that. So
I also like the video of him throwing his phone because he ran a 4.45 and he was upset. It's like, come on, man.
And then later he got told by one of the NFL.com like on the field reporters that he actually run a 4.39, and his like mood was completely different. He was like so pumped and happy and like on the like, yeah, that's 4.39. It's cool. I mean, look, and he wasn't alone. He's just obviously the guy that's kind of the crown jewel at this point as far as athletic testing that we saw yesterday. But there were several different guys, including this guy whose name we're going to butcher right now from Northwestern, who's going by Tommy, and give me the last name, Marcus.
Barway?
Barway. I think that's right. Look, he was a really interesting player at
Northwestern.
Yeah, Northwestern.
Yep.
Oh, I meant at Mobile. Because you watch him and he's very much kind of okay. He's the classic. What are we going to do with this guy? Right? He's that 6'3", 280-pound guy who, well, he's not quite tall enough that you like him at the edge. He's not quite, but he's too big to play. Not play defensive tackle. But look, I mean, this guy is a certified athletic freak. And I think honestly that he's one of these guys that you could potentially play inside and outside. I think that he's, especially after seeing how athletic he is, having watched him at Mobile a little bit, I do want to go. I have not watched a lick of tape of him yet, so I want to go watch him.
Neither
as well.
have I, to be honest, but
yeah, but I do think that with that athleticism at that size and that kind of versatility, I mean, he was testing as an edge, not as a defensive tackle. So I think that, I think that the Cowboys probably would be interested here because I think, this more so than what we just talked about with Kalijah Cansey is that, he is a tick better athlete overall, I would say. Maybe not faster, but he's a tick better athlete to play the position outside and inside. And I think he probably is a little bit longer and stronger player that can hold up a little bit more inside. So he's an interesting guy to watch as well.
34-inch arms.
More. Yeah, 34-inch arms. That's going to make a huge difference. And I think
Right.
that's a real big difference between him and Cansey, to be honest.
Correct. There's a 4-inch difference and like a 10-inch difference in the wingspan, right?
Yeah, that's big.
I've been charting defensive tackles and edge rushers for a while. I mean, I've got this database of like 500 names and put in all the numbers last night. And I tried to sort it by, guys over 270 pounds that run a sub 4.6 and had some of the other testing stuff. There is no close comps for Tommy from Northwestern. The closest comp that I found was Rashawn Gary, who was 6'4", 277. But the difference is that Tommy ran a whole tenth of a second faster than Rashawn Gary, despite being 7 pounds heavier. That's
crazy. And that's nuts. I saw you tweet that out and it kind of like totally fired something in my brain. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, that makes some sense. Cause Gary again was this freak athlete, like this guy that was I'm pretty sure number one on Bruce Feldman's freak list the year that he came out, was just this like generationally athletic guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's true.
Yeah, I'm just gun shy from using the word generational at this point. And just really, when he was coming out, teams weren't exactly sure what to do with him, right? Because he seemed, his tape didn't show you a ton as the kind of pass rusher like that you would see and end up seeing what he does in Green Bay, right? But it was just a lot of projection, right? Yep. I really like this comparison, I think, because I do think that it shows you, it reminds me like, hey, we all were not exactly sure what to do with Rashawn Gary. We all knew he was a football player and we all knew that he was extremely athletic, but sometimes with these kind of players, it's okay to just trust that he's good on tape and he has athleticism. Get him in your system and figure out where to put him.
Yep. And I will say, like, we've seen Dan Quinn use like this 4-eye position where, hey, you're over 260 pounds. Let's, put you in a different spot. Not really a traditional defensive tackle, not really a defensive end, and just see if you can wreak some havoc, kind of shooting gaps and stuff. So maybe that's where he ends up. Maybe the Cowboys just take a chance on athleticism. Never going to be an issue for me. So
no.
Let's talk about some players that maybe left us wanting a little bit more from the NFL Combine next. All right, Landon, one of the parts of the Combine that we don't like is some players that underperform or don't measure in quite as well as you hoped. Was there anybody from Thursday or Friday? We got some cornerback measurements today that disappointed you a little bit.
Actually, I mean, since we're going to open it up to today, I will say the Keely Ringo arm length measurement is surprising. I think he ended up measuring under 32 inches, which is below the threshold for the Cowboys, that's surprising, because it felt like just watching him, he looks so much like what you would expect a Dan Quinn corner to look like.
Yep.
And I know that I just kind of reached over a whole bunch of defensive linemen and defensive ends and linebackers.
No, but it's true. That's the position that we've been talking about the most is corner.
Yeah, and I think because of the concentration there and the focus there, and it's just I guess when I'm disappointed in measurement stuff, it's because I feel certain that just by watching them on tape that this person is this, right? Like I
Yeah.
feel certain just watching him that this person's at least 6 feet tall. I feel
Yeah.
certain watching this corner he's got at least 32-inch arms, and I think for me, Ringo is one of these situations where I felt like he is going to test incredibly, and he will. Like we'll see it today, I'm sure. He's going to run like crazy. He's probably going to jump like nuts too. I think that the issue is I expected him to kind of fall to the Cowboys a little bit because his skill set only seems to match very much a kind of siloed cover 3, cover 1 defense. So I thought the Cowboys might have, if he's got sub 32-inch arms, I mean, even with that athleticism, I have to think the appeal is down a little bit. I don't know. I didn't love his tape enough to break my thresholds to accommodate him, coming onto the team. So that one was a little bit disappointing.
I'll give you another one. Brian Branch, the safety / corner from Alabama. There's been some rumors that he's going to test with the cornerbacks this week, but he's really like one of these slot corners, but also kind of hybrid safeties. Came in at 190 pounds with 30-inch arms and a 75-inch wingspan. That would be the lightest safety to be drafted in the top 100 in NFL history. It's one of the smallest arm lengths that you'll see for a safety in NFL history. And if he's going to be a corner, like a slot corner, that's still really small. So Brian Branch's tape is awesome, but he's just a lot smaller than I think a lot of people expected.
I think for me, if I was a non-Cowboys team, I would just Branch would be one of these guys that I would just look past the numbers.
Hope somebody else drafts, right?
Well, no, I actually like him a lot because I think that I actually think that just again, haven't studied him exclusively, but I have watched enough Alabama tape and seen that dude around the football enough to know that I think that there's an overthinking element that might happen with this player. Okay. I understand, threshold.
You're saying like he's Tyrann Mathieu, right? Like it doesn't matter with the size.
Yes, that we shouldn't don't make the Tyrann Mathieu mistake again. And I think we're gonna have a similar conversation at some point, probably again with Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think if he runs slower than we anticipate at his pro day, it sounds like he's not actually going to run today, or I'm sorry, this week. Yeah. Oh, it doesn't sound like he's gonna run his pro day.
I kind of heard.
You think he's gonna pull one of those? I'll run at my pro day, and then he won't run at his pro day. Even if that's the case, again, don't overthink this. Like there are some players in these drafts that I think are just such good football players that and I know that this is something that's terrible to say, but I think there is a certain class of player you find them one or two every draft class that I am willing to just ignore thresholds because I know that they're good football players.
The only other one that really was disappointing for me yesterday was Siaki, the defensive tackle from Baylor. Listen, when you're drafting a 335-pound defensive tackle, I know you're not going to test well. Like that part of it's not surprising. But what I would like to see is like surprising athleticism. Like, oh, you ran a 5.1 at 330. Like that's good. Like I'm not expecting you to run a 4.7 like Jordan Davis did, but he ran a 5.4. 40-yard dash. He had a 1.9 10-yard split, a 7.8 3-cone, a 5-second 20-yard shuttle. Like, if I'm drafting a nose tackle inside the top 50, I just want to be pleasantly surprised by his athleticism. We just didn't see that yesterday.
Yeah, I don't know that it's going to be a huge knock against him, but he had an opportunity to actually improve his draft stock a lot, and that opportunity didn't kind of fizzle out for him.
Exactly. So, overall, nothing. I don't think anything was too shockingly bad on the negative side for anybody, but was a lot of guys that I thought improved their stock.
Yeah, I think, even the guys who performed really well, it was kind of expected. I mean, I don't think I think the numbers were shocking for Nolan Smith, but I don't think the fact that Nolan Smith blew up the combine is surprising, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think that's the thing, right? Is that the guys who you expected to perform well certainly did. The guys who you weren't sure whether they're going to perform well performed fine. And then there's there's like 3 or 4 people who, that's a little disappointing. So, exactly. There's just not a lot of I remember some combines we've walked away from a day of practice and we're just like, I just knocked like 5 guys I had in my top 50 all the way out. And I don't think that we necessarily solved that yesterday.
No.
Maybe we will today.
Yeah, cornerback today is cornerbacks and safety. This is one of the more important days because
big movement.
40. I mean, if you're a corner and you run a 4.4 flat, fantastic. But if you run a 4.58, all of a sudden we're having a conversation. So today is a very important day. We will be back on Monday to talk about what happened today, what happened with the wide receivers, because we're certainly going to be watching the tight ends, and obviously the offensive linemen. So make sure you guys tune in for that. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. Now make your second listen to Locked On NFL Draft Show. Damian Parsons and Keith Sanchez provide in-depth coverage of the biggest NFL draft prospects with deep dives into the sleepers and hidden gems that can change your favorite NFL franchise. Find Locked On NFL Draft wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Go check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also, go listen to us on YouTube. Go follow Landon at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy the combine, and we'll see you guys right back here on Monday.